A millionaire saw a little girl identical to his deceased daughter, crying in the rain. When the millionaire approached, the little girl screamed something that left him speechless. If the story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching us from. We'll keep going. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the manicured lawn of the Anderson estate. Inside the sprawling mansion, successful real estate mogul Robert Anderson, 45, sat in his opulent home office, surrounded by the trappings of wealth and success. Yet as he gazed out the window, his eyes held a hint of melancholy that no amount of money could erase. 5 years had passed since the loss of his first wife, Emily. The pain had dulled over time, but it never truly disappeared. Robert's world now revolved around two people, his adorable 5-year-old daughter, Lily, and his second wife, Victoria. A soft knock on the door interrupted his reverie. "Come in," Robert called, his voice warm and inviting. The door creaked open, and little Lily peeked in, her big blue eyes sparkling with excitement. She clutched a piece of paper in her small hands, practically bouncing with anticipation. "Daddy, Daddy, look what I made!" Lily exclaimed, rushing toward her father's desk. Robert's face lit up at the sight of his daughter. He swiveled his chair and opened his arms wide, inviting her in for a hug. "What have you got there, princess?" Lily climbed onto her father's lap, her golden curls bouncing as she settled in. She proudly presented her artwork, a colorful crayon drawing filled with stick figures and swirls of vibrant hues. "It's our trip to the park last weekend," Lily explained, pointing to each figure in turn. "See, there's you and me and Victoria, and look, I even drew Mr. Whiskers," she giggled, indicating a blob that vaguely resembled their neighbor's cat. Robert studied the drawing, his heart swelling with pride and love. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. You're quite the artist." As he examined the picture more closely, a detail caught his eye. In the corner of the drawing, Lily had sketched what looked like an ice cream cone. The sight triggered a memory, and Robert felt a pang of guilt. "Oh, Lily," he said, his voice tinged with regret. "I completely forgot about our ice cream date. I promised to take you for a treat after our park visit, didn't I?" Lily's smile faltered for a moment, but she quickly brightened. "It's okay, Daddy. We can go another time, right?" Robert hugged his daughter tightly, marveling at her forgiving nature. "Absolutely, princess. In fact, how about we go this evening? After dinner, we'll head to your favorite ice cream parlor. Just you and me." Lily's eyes widened with delight. "Really? Oh, thank you, Daddy." She threw her arms around his neck, nearly knocking him off balance with her enthusiasm. As Robert held his daughter close, he made a silent vow to always prioritize these precious moments. He knew all too well how fleeting life could be, and he was determined to cherish every second with Lily. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of business calls and paperwork. As the sun began to set, casting a warm golden glow across the city, Robert found himself looking forward to the evening ahead. He imagined Lily's face lit up with joy as she savored her favorite ice cream flavor, and the thought brought a smile to his lips. Just as he was about to wrap up for the day, Victoria appeared in the doorway of his office. Her sleek blonde hair was perfectly styled, and her designer outfit accentuated her slim figure. She leaned against the doorframe, a coy smile playing on her lips. "Hard at work as always, darling?" she purred, sauntering into the room. Robert leaned back in his chair, taking in the sight of his beautiful wife. "Just finishing up. Lily and I have a date this evening." Victoria's eyebrow arched slightly. "Oh? And what about your wife? Am I not invited to this little outing?" Robert chuckled, standing up to embrace her. "It's a daddy-daughter ice cream run. I promised her last weekend, and I completely forgot. You know how she loves our special time together." Victoria's smile tightened almost imperceptibly, but she quickly masked it with a laugh. "Of course, darling. You two have fun. I'll just have a quiet evening at home with a good book and a glass of wine." As Robert kissed his wife on the cheek, he failed to notice the calculating look that flashed in her eyes. He was too preoccupied with thoughts of the evening ahead, blissfully unaware of the storm that was about to engulf his perfect world. Little did Robert know that this ordinary Tuesday would mark the beginning of a nightmare beyond his wildest imagination. As he left his office hand in hand with an excited Lily, the wheels of a sinister plan were already in motion, a plan that would test the limits of a father's love and unravel the very fabric of their seemingly idyllic life. The Anderson mansion stood silent as the sun dipped below the horizon, its grand facade hiding the secrets and lies that lurked within its walls. And as night fell over the city, fate prepared to deal a cruel hand that would forever change the lives of those who called this place home. The cheerful jingle of the ice cream parlor's bell echoed through the air as Robert and Lily stepped out into the cool evening breeze. Lily's face was adorned with a mix of chocolate and vanilla, her eyes sparkling with delight as she clutched her father's hand. "Thank you, Daddy. That was the best ice cream ever," Lily exclaimed, her words slightly muffled by the remnants of her treat. Robert chuckled, his heart full of joy. "I'm glad you enjoyed it, Princess. Now, let's get you cleaned up before we head home. We don't want to give Victoria any reason to scold us, do we?" As they walked to the car, Robert couldn't help but feel a sense of contentment wash over him. These moments with Lily were precious, reminders of the simple joys that made life worth living. He made a mental note to schedule more of these outings, determined to be the father Lily deserved. The drive home was filled with Lily's animated chatter about her day at school and her plans for an upcoming art project. Robert listened intently, offering encouragement and suggestions, savoring every second of their time together. As they pulled into the long driveway of the Anderson estate, Robert noticed that the house seemed unusually dark. "That's odd," he muttered to himself. "Victoria must have gone to bed early." He helped Lily out of the car and they made their way to the front door. Just as Robert was about to insert his key, the door swung open, revealing a distraught-looking Victoria. "Robert, thank God you're back," Victoria cried, her voice trembling with emotion. "I've been trying to reach you for hours." Alarm bells immediately went off in Robert's mind. He instinctively pulled Lily closer to him. "What's wrong, Victoria? What happened?" Victoria's eyes darted between Robert and Lily, a strange mix of emotions flashing across her face. She took a deep breath, as if steeling herself for what she was about to say. "There's been an accident," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Lily's in the hospital. It's bad, Robert." Robert felt as if the ground had suddenly disappeared beneath his feet. He looked down at Lily, who was staring up at him with confusion in her big blue eyes. "What are you talking about?" he demanded, his voice rising with panic. "Lily's right here with me." Victoria's eyes widened in what appeared to be shock. She stumbled backward, her hand flying to her mouth. "Oh my God," she gasped. I don't understand. How is this possible?" Robert's mind was reeling. He clutched Lily's hand tighter, as if afraid she might disappear at any moment. "Victoria, explain yourself. Right now." With trembling hands, Victoria pulled out her phone. "I received a call from the hospital about an hour ago. They said Lily had been brought in after a terrible car accident. I've been trying to reach you ever since." As if on cue, Robert's phone began to buzz in his pocket. He fished it out, his heart pounding, as he saw the dozens of missed calls and messages. How had he not noticed them before? "Daddy?" Lily's small voice cut through the tension. "What's going on? Why is Victoria crying?" Robert knelt down beside his daughter, forcing a reassuring smile onto his face. "It's okay, sweetheart. There's just been a misunderstanding. Why don't you go up to your room and get ready for bed? I'll be up in a few minutes to tuck you in." Lily hesitated, her eyes darting between her father and Victoria. Finally, she nodded and made her way up the grand staircase, leaving the adults alone in the foyer. As soon as Lily was out of earshot, Robert turned to Victoria, his face a mask of confusion and anger. "I want you to tell me exactly what's going on, and I want the truth. Now." Victoria sank onto the nearest chair, her body shaking with what appeared to be sobs. "I don't know, Robert. I swear I'm telling you the truth. The hospital called and said Lily had been in a car accident. They said it was serious, that we needed to come right away." Robert's mind was spinning. None of this made sense. He had been with Lily all evening. There was no way she could have been in an accident. And yet the panic in Victoria's voice seemed genuine. "We need to get to the bottom of this," Robert said, his voice tight with tension. "Call the hospital back, find out exactly what's going on. I'm going to check on Lily and make sure she's okay." As Robert climbed the stairs, a sense of unease settled over him. Something wasn't right, but he couldn't put his finger on what it was. He paused outside Lily's room, taking a deep breath to compose himself before pushing open the door. The room was empty. Panic surged through Robert's veins as he rushed into the room, calling out Lily's name. He checked the ensuite bathroom, the walk-in closet, even under the bed. But Lily was nowhere to be found. Heart pounding, Robert raced back downstairs. "Victoria!" he shouted. Lily's not in her room, she's gone. He found Victoria in the kitchen, her face pale as she clutched the phone to her ear. When she saw Robert, her eyes filled with tears. "Robert," she whispered, her voice breaking. "The hospital. They're insisting. They say Lily is there and she's in critical condition. They're asking for us to come immediately." Robert felt as if he were trapped in a nightmare. His mind couldn't reconcile the events of the evening with what he was hearing now. How could Lily be in two places at once? And where was his little girl? As he stood there, frozen in disbelief, Robert had no way of knowing that this was only the beginning. The web of deceit and danger that was closing in around him would test his love, his sanity, and his very will to live. In the distance, a siren wailed, cutting through the night air like a harbinger of the chaos to come. And somewhere in the city, a little girl with golden curls and big blue eyes wandered alone, lost in a world that had suddenly turned cold and unfamiliar. The stage was set for a battle that would push Robert to his limits, forcing him to confront truths he never imagined, and fight for the one thing that mattered most, his daughter's life. As he grabbed his keys and rushed out the door with Victoria, Robert had no idea that every step he took was leading him further into a labyrinth of lies from which there might be no escape. The fluorescent lights of St. Mary's Hospital cast an eerie glow over Robert's face as he burst through the emergency room doors, Victoria close on his heels. His heart pounded in his chest, a desperate rhythm that matched the frantic pace of his thoughts. "My daughter," he gasped to the startled receptionist. "Lily Anderson. I was told she was brought in after an accident." The woman behind the desk tapped quickly at her keyboard, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Yes, Mr. Anderson. Lily was admitted about 2 hours ago. The doctor will be with you shortly to discuss her condition." Robert's mind reeled. 2 hours ago he had been sharing ice cream with Lily at their favorite parlor. How could she possibly be here? He turned to Victoria, who was wringing her hands nervously beside him. "This doesn't make any sense," he hissed. "You saw Lily with me when we came home. How can she be here?" Victoria's eyes were wide with what appeared to be genuine confusion and distress. "I don't know, Robert. I'm as baffled as you are. But the hospital called and they insist she's here. What if there's been some kind of mix-up?" Before Robert could respond, a tall man in a white coat approached them. "Mr. and Mrs. Anderson?" he asked, his voice grave. Robert nodded, unable to find his voice. The doctor's somber expression sent a chill down his spine. "I'm Dr. Patel. I've been overseeing your daughter's care since she was brought in," the doctor explained. "I'm afraid Lily's condition is quite serious. She suffered severe injuries in the accident." Robert's head spun. He gripped the edge of the reception desk to steady himself. "This can't be right," he muttered. "There must be some mistake. I was with Lily all evening. She can't have been in an accident." Dr. Patel's eyebrows rose in surprise. "Mr. Anderson, I assure you, the child brought in was identified as Lily Anderson. She had identification on her when she was admitted." Victoria placed a hand on Robert's arm. "Robert, please, let's hear what the doctor has to say. We need to know what's happening with Lily." Feeling as though he were moving through a thick fog, Robert allowed himself to be led to a private consultation room. As Dr. Patel detailed Lily's injuries, multiple fractures, internal bleeding, head trauma. Robert felt the world tilting on its axis. "Can we see her?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Patel hesitated, exchanging a glance with Victoria. "I'm afraid that's not possible at the moment. Lily is in surgery, and given the extent of her injuries, well, it might be best to wait until she's more stable." Victoria let out a choked sob. "Oh God, my poor baby." Robert stood abruptly, startling both the doctor and Victoria. "This is insane. I need to see my daughter, now." "Mr. Anderson, please," Dr. Patel said, holding up his hands in a placating gesture. "I understand you're upset, but barging into the operating room won't help Lily. The best thing you can do right now is wait." Frustrated and feeling utterly helpless, Robert sank back into his chair. He buried his face in his hands, trying to make sense of the nightmare unfolding around him. As Victoria spoke quietly with the doctor, arranging for updates on Lily's condition, Robert's mind raced. He replayed the events of the evening over and over. The ice cream parlor, the drive home, Lily's small hand in his as they walked to the front door. It had all been real, hadn't it? And yet, here they were, in a hospital, being told that Lily was fighting for her life after a car accident he couldn't reconcile with reality. Hours passed in a haze of coffee cups and hushed conversations. Robert paced the waiting room, alternating between demanding answers from the hospital staff and making frantic phone calls to friends and family. No one seemed to have any information that could shed light on the baffling situation. As dawn broke, casting a pale light through the hospital windows, Dr. Patel returned. The lines on his face seemed deeper, his eyes heavy with fatigue. "Mr. and Mrs. Anderson," he began, his tone careful. "Lily is out of surgery. We've managed to stabilize her condition, but she remains in critical care." Robert leapt to his feet. "Can we see her now? Please, I need to see my daughter." Dr. Patel hesitated, then nodded slowly. "You can see her, but I must warn you, the sight might be distressing. Lily has suffered extensive injuries, and she's connected to various machines that are helping her breathe and monitoring her vital signs." As they followed Dr. Patel through the sterile corridors, Robert felt a growing sense of dread. Something about this whole situation felt wrong, but he couldn't put his finger on what it was. They paused outside the ICU. Dr. Patel turned to them, his expression grave. "Remember, Lily's appearance may be shocking. Try to stay calm for her sake." Robert nodded numbly, bracing himself for what lay beyond the door. As Dr. Patel pushed it open, Robert's heart pounded so hard he thought it might burst from his chest. The room was dimly lit, filled with the soft beeping of medical equipment. In the center stood a bed, surrounded by monitors and IV stands. And there, lying motionless amidst a tangle of tubes and wires, was a small figure. Robert approached slowly, his legs feeling like lead. He peered down at the child in the bed, expecting to see Lily's familiar features. What he saw instead made his blood run cold. The girl in the bed was not Lily. She was about the same age and size, with similar blonde hair, but the face, what was visible beneath the bandages and tubes, was unmistakably not his daughter's. Robert stumbled backward, his mind reeling. That's not Lily," he gasped. Victoria rushed to his side, her eyes wide with shock as she looked at the child in the bed. "What? But how? Who is she?" Dr. Patel looked stunned. "Mr. Anderson, are you certain?" The child was brought in with identification indicating she was Lily Anderson. Robert's shock quickly gave way to a surge of panic. If this wasn't Lily, then where was his daughter? And who was this injured child claiming to be Lily? As the room erupted into a flurry of questions and confusion, Robert felt a cold certainty settle over him. Something sinister was at play here, something that went far beyond a simple hospital mix-up. His daughter was out there somewhere, possibly in danger, and he would stop at nothing to find her and bring her home safely. Little did Robert know, his quest for the truth would lead him down a dark and twisted path, one that would test the very limits of his love and determination. The game was afoot, and the stakes couldn't be higher. The revelation that the injured child in the hospital bed was not Lily sent shockwaves through the ICU. Dr. Patel immediately called for a full investigation, while nurses rushed to double-check the patient's information and alert hospital administration. Robert stood in the middle of the chaos, his mind struggling to process the implications of what he'd just discovered. He turned to Victoria, who was pale and trembling beside him. "We need to go home," he said, his voice low and urgent. "We need to find Lily." Victoria nodded, her eyes wide with what appeared to be shock. "Of course, Robert. Let's go." As they hurried out of the hospital, Robert's phone buzzed incessantly. News of the mix-up had spread quickly, and friends, family, and even some of his business associates were calling for updates. He ignored them all, focusing solely on getting back to the mansion and unraveling this bizarre mystery. The drive home was tense, filled with a heavy silence punctuated only by Victoria's occasional sniffles. Robert's mind raced, replaying the events of the previous evening over and over. He had been with Lily, he was certain of it. They had shared ice cream, laughed together, held hands as they walked to the front door. How could she have vanished into thin air? As they pulled into the driveway of the Anderson estate, Robert noticed something odd. The curtains in Lily's room, which had been open when they left for the hospital, were now drawn shut. "Did you close Lily's curtains?" he asked Victoria sharply. She looked confused. "No, I don't think so. Maybe one of the staff did it." Robert's suspicion grew. Something wasn't right here, and he was determined to get to the bottom of it. They entered the house and Robert immediately headed for Lily's room, taking the stairs 2 at a time. He burst through the door, half expecting, hoping, to find his daughter tucked safely in her bed. The room was empty, just as it had been when he checked before rushing to the hospital. But now in the light of day, Robert noticed details he had missed in his panic the night before. Lily's favorite stuffed animal, a worn teddy bear she never slept without, was missing from her bed. The drawer where she kept her prized collection of hair ribbons was slightly ajar, and there on her little writing desk lay a single crayon, red, Lily's favorite color. Robert's heart clenched. These were signs of Lily's presence, recent signs. She had been here in this room sometime after they had gone to the hospital. He whirled around to face Victoria, who stood in the doorway watching him with an unreadable expression. "She was here," he said, his voice tight with emotion. "Lily was here, Victoria, while we were at the hospital." Victoria's eyes widened. "But how is that possible? We've been gone all night. Where could she have gone?" Robert's mind was spinning. None of this made sense. How could Lily have been at home while they were at the hospital with a child they thought was her? And where was she now? As he stood there, trying to piece together this impossible puzzle, a glint of something metallic caught his eye. There, partially hidden beneath Lily's pink rug, was a small key. Robert knelt down and picked it up, examining it closely. It wasn't a key he recognized, certainly not one that belonged to any lock in the house. It looked old, possibly antique, with intricate engravings on its surface. "What's that?" Victoria asked, stepping closer. Robert pocketed the key quickly, a sudden instinct telling him to keep this discovery to himself. "Nothing," he muttered. "Just one of Lily's toys." He turned to Victoria, his expression hardening with resolve. "We need to call the police. Lily is missing, and we need to find her." Victoria nodded, but there was a flicker of something, hesitation, fear, in her eyes. "Of course, darling. I'll do it right away." As Victoria left to make the call, Robert remained in Lily's room, his mind working overtime. The key he'd found felt like a clue, a piece of a larger puzzle he couldn't yet see. But one thing was clear. The events of the past 12 hours were not as they seemed. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts until he found the number he was looking for. Jack Reeves, an old friend from his college days who had gone on to become a private investigator. If anyone could help him make sense of this nightmare, it was Jack. Robert hit dial, his heart pounding as he waited for Jack to pick up. On the third ring, a gruff voice answered. "Reeves here. Jack, it's Robert Anderson. I need your help. My daughter is missing, and I think something very strange is going on." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Tell me everything," Jack said. As Robert recounted the events of the past night, from the ice cream outing to the hospital mix-up to the mysterious key, he felt a chill run down his spine. Saying it all out loud only reinforced how bizarre and frightening the situation was. Jack listened in silence, only interrupting occasionally to ask for clarification. When Robert finished, there was a long pause. "Robert," Jack said finally, his voice grave, "this isn't just strange. This sounds dangerous. I'll be there in an hour. Don't talk to anyone else about this, not even the police. And Robert, watch your back. Even in your own home." The call ended, leaving Robert standing in the middle of Lily's room, the weight of Jack's warning settling over him like a heavy cloak. He glanced at the door, suddenly acutely aware of every sound in the house. Somewhere out there, Lily was lost and possibly in danger. And here, in what should have been the safest place in the world for her, shadows of doubt were creeping in, turning familiar faces into potential threats. As he heard Victoria's voice downstairs, speaking to what he assumed was a police dispatcher, Robert made a silent vow. He would find Lily no matter what it took, and he would uncover the truth behind this web of lies and deception, no matter where that truth might lead him. Little did he know, the path ahead would test not just his determination, but his very understanding of reality and trust. The game was far from over, and the most shocking revelations were yet to come. The Anderson mansion, once a symbol of success and family bliss, now felt like a gilded cage to Robert. As he paced the ornate hallways, waiting for Jack to arrive, every shadow seemed to hide a secret, every creak of the old house a potential threat. Victoria had finished her call with the police and was now sitting in the living room, her face a mask of worry. Robert watched her from the doorway, a seed of doubt growing in his mind. Could she be involved in Lily's disappearance? The thought seemed absurd, and yet, "The police are on their way," Victoria said, breaking the tense silence. "They're treating it as a priority case." Robert nodded, his mind elsewhere. The key he'd found in Lily's room weighed heavily in his pocket, a tangible link to the mystery surrounding his daughter's disappearance. He was tempted to show it to Victoria, to ask if she recognized it, but Jack's warning echoed in his head. "Watch your back, even in your own home." A sharp knock at the door made them both jump. Robert's heart raced as he went to answer it, hoping to see Jack's familiar face. Instead, he found himself face to face with two stern-looking police officers. "Mr. Anderson?" the taller of the two asked, flashing a badge. "I'm Detective Sarah Chen, and this is my partner, Detective Mike Owens. We're here about your missing daughter." Robert ushered them in, feeling a mix of relief and apprehension. As much as he wanted the police involved, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this situation than met the eye. The detectives settled in the living room, notebooks at the ready. Detective Chen's sharp eyes scanned the room, taking in every detail. "Mr. and Mrs. Anderson, we need you to walk us through the events of last night, from the moment you last saw Lily." Robert began recounting the story, starting with the ice cream outing. As he spoke, he noticed Detective Owens frowning, his pen pausing on the paper. "Mr. Anderson?" Owens interrupted. "You say you were with Lily at an ice cream parlor last night, but according to the report we received, you and your wife were at the hospital all night with an injured child you believed to be Lily. Can you explain this discrepancy?" Robert felt a chill run down his spine. How could he explain something he didn't understand himself? He glanced at Victoria, who was wringing her hands nervously. "I know it sounds impossible," Robert said slowly, "but it's the truth. I was with Lily at the ice cream parlor. We came home, and then Victoria told me there had been an accident. We rushed to the hospital, but the child there, it wasn't Lily." Detective Chen's eyebrows shot up. "Are you suggesting there's been some sort of mix-up at the hospital, or something more sinister?" Before Robert could respond, the doorbell rang again. This time, when he opened the door, he was relieved to see Jack Reeves standing there, his weathered face set in a grim expression. "Jack," Robert breathed, "thank God you're here." Jack stepped inside, his eyes quickly taking in the scene. When he saw the detectives, his posture stiffened slightly. "Robert, I thought I told you to wait for me before talking to anyone." Detective Chen stood, her eyes narrowing. "And you are?" "Jack Reeves, private investigator," Jack replied, his tone cool. "I'm an old friend of Robert's. He called me in to help with the situation." The room crackled with tension as Jack and the detectives sized each other up. Robert felt caught in the middle, unsure of who to trust or what to say next. Victoria broke the silence, her voice trembling slightly. "Perhaps we should all sit down and try to figure this out together. For Lily's sake." As they settled back into the living room, Robert couldn't shake the feeling that he was missing something crucial. His eyes darted from Victoria to the detectives to Jack, searching for any clue, any hint of what might really be going on. Jack cleared his throat. "Before we go any further, I think it's important that we establish a timeline of events. Robert, why don't you start from the beginning? And I mean the very beginning. Tell us about the day leading up to Lily's disappearance." As Robert began to speak, recounting the mundane details of what had seemed like an ordinary day, a memory surfaced. Something he had dismissed as unimportant at the time, but now— "Wait," he said, interrupting himself. "There was something strange. Yesterday afternoon I found Lily in my office. She wasn't supposed to be in there, and she seemed scared. When I asked her what was wrong, she just hugged me and said she loved me. I thought she was just being affectionate, but now I wonder—" Detective Chen leaned forward. "Did Lily say anything else? Anything that might give us a clue about what was frightening her?" Robert closed his eyes, trying to recall every detail of that moment. She asked me a question. She wanted to know if I would always be her daddy, no matter what. I told her of course I would, but I didn't think much of it at the time." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this new information. Jack's brow furrowed in concentration, while the detectives exchanged meaningful glances. Victoria let out a small gasp. "Oh, Robert," she whispered, "do you think Lily knew something was going to happen?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. Robert felt a cold dread settling in his stomach. Had Lily been trying to warn him? And if so, warn him about what? As the group began to discuss this new development, Robert's hand unconsciously moved to his pocket, feeling the outline of the mysterious key. He glanced at Jack, wondering if now was the time to reveal his discovery. But before he could make a decision, a sharp ring cut through the tense atmosphere. It was Robert's phone, the screen lighting up with an unknown number. With trembling hands, he answered the call, putting it on speaker. "Hello?" There was a moment of static, and then a voice, distorted and unrecognizable, spoke. "Mr. Anderson, if you want to see your daughter again, listen carefully." The room erupted into silent chaos. The detectives sprang into action, signaling for a trace on the call. Jack moved closer to Robert, his eyes alert. "And Victoria?" Robert couldn't help but notice. Victoria's face had gone deathly pale. As the voice on the phone continued, laying out a series of cryptic instructions, Robert felt as though he was standing on the edge of a precipice. Whatever came next would change everything, and he knew with chilling certainty that nothing would ever be the same again. The game had taken a dark turn, and Lily's life hung in the balance. But as Robert listened to the voice, a fierce determination blazed within him. He would play this game, follow every clue, and face whatever nightmares lay ahead. For Lily, he would move heaven and earth. Little did he know, the true test of his love and resolve was only just beginning. The voice on the phone crackled with static, its distorted tone sending chills down Robert's spine. "Mr. Anderson, your daughter's fate is in your hands now. Follow our instructions precisely, and you may see her again. Deviate, and the consequences will be unfortunate." Robert's grip on the phone tightened, his knuckles turning white. "I want proof that Lily is okay. Let me talk to her." There was a pause, filled only by the sound of Robert's ragged breathing. Then, faintly in the background, he heard a small voice. "Daddy?" "Lily!" Robert cried, his heart leaping. "Sweetheart, are you all right? Where are you?" But before Lily could respond, the distorted voice returned. "That's enough now. Listen carefully, Mr. Anderson. In exactly 1 hour, you will receive a text message with an address. Come alone. No police, no private investigators. If we suspect any law enforcement involvement, the deal is off." The line went dead, leaving the room in stunned silence. Detective Chen was the first to speak, her voice tight with frustration. "We weren't able to trace the call. They're using some kind of advanced scrambling technology." Robert sank into a chair, his mind reeling. He looked up to see all eyes on him, the detective's gazes sharp with suspicion, Jack's furrowed in concern, and Victoria's... There was something in Victoria's eyes he couldn't quite read. "You can't seriously be considering going alone," Detective Owens said, breaking the tense silence. "This is clearly a trap. We need to set up a task force, coordinate with..." "No," Robert interrupted, his voice firm. "You heard what they said. If they suspect any police involvement, Lily pays the price. I can't risk that." Jack stepped forward, his expression grim. "Robert, I understand your position, but walking into this blind is suicide. At least let me come with you, provide some backup." Robert shook his head. "I appreciate it, Jack, but I have to do this alone. It's the only way to ensure Lily's safety." As the room erupted into arguments, with the detectives insisting on police involvement and Jack proposing various covert strategies, Robert found his gaze drawn to Victoria. She had been uncharacteristically quiet since the phone call, her face pale and drawn. "Victoria," he said softly, "what do you think?" She startled slightly, as if pulled from deep thought. I think you should do whatever it takes to bring our little girl home safely," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Something about her tone, the slight hesitation before saying "our," set off alarm bells in Robert's mind. He remembered the key in his pocket, the strange occurrences of the past 24 hours, and felt a creeping suspicion that there was more to this situation than met the eye. As the hour ticked by, tension in the Anderson mansion reached a fever pitch. The detectives reluctantly agreed to pull back, setting up a perimeter a few blocks away from the house. Jack, after much argument, conceded to Robert's insistence on going alone, but provided him with a discreet tracking device and a panic button disguised as a cufflink. Finally, Robert's phone buzzed with an incoming text. He read the address, his heart pounding. It was an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town, a location that set off every warning bell in his mind. As he prepared to leave, Victoria approached him, her eyes brimming with tears. "Robert," she said, her voice choked with emotion, Please be careful. Bring our Lily home. Robert nodded, unable to shake the feeling that something was off about Victoria's behavior. As he turned to go, she grabbed his arm, pulling him into a tight embrace. Remember, she whispered in his ear, things aren't always what they seem. Before Robert could question her cryptic statement, she pulled away, hurrying upstairs with a muffled sob. He stood there for a moment, bewildered, before the urgency of the situation pushed all other thoughts from his mind. The drive to the warehouse was a blur of streetlights and racing thoughts. Robert's mind kept returning to Lily's voice on the phone, so small and frightened. He gripped the steering wheel tighter, determination stealing his resolve. Whatever it took, he would bring his daughter home. As he pulled up to the dilapidated warehouse, Robert's senses were on high alert. The area was deserted, the only sound the distant hum of traffic from the highway. He stepped out of the car, the gravel crunching under his feet in the eerie silence. "I'm here," he called out, his voice echoing off the corrugated metal walls. "I came alone just like you said. Where's my daughter?" For a long moment there was no response. Then, from the shadows near the warehouse entrance, a figure emerged. Robert's breath caught in his throat as he recognized the silhouette. "Victoria?" he gasped, disbelief coloring his voice. His wife stepped into the dim light cast by a nearby street lamp, her face a mask of conflicting emotions. "Hello, Robert," she said softly. "I'm so sorry it's come to this." Robert's mind reeled, unable to process what he was seeing. "Victoria, what's going on? Where's Lily?" Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "Lily is safe, Robert. She's with her real family." The world seemed to tilt on its axis as Robert struggled to make sense of Victoria's words. "Real family? What are you talking about? I'm her father." "No, Robert," Victoria said, her voice trembling. "You're not, and I'm not her mother. We never were." As the implications of Victoria's words sank in, Robert felt as though the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. The past 24 hours, the years before that, everything he thought he knew was crumbling around him. "I don't understand," he whispered, his voice hoarse with shock and confusion. Victoria took a step toward him, her face etched with a mix of guilt and determination. "It's time you learned the truth, Robert, about Lily, about us, about everything. But I warn you, once you go down this path, there's no turning back. Are you ready to have your whole world turned upside down?" As Robert stood there, caught between the life he thought he knew and the terrifying unknown that lay ahead, he realized he was standing on the precipice of a truth that would change everything. Whatever came next, whatever revelations awaited him, one thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same again. With a deep breath, Robert steeled himself for what was to come. "Tell me everything," he said, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. "I need to know the truth." And so, in the shadow of the abandoned warehouse, with the weight of secrets and lies hanging heavy in the air, Victoria began to unravel the web of deception that had entangled their lives for so long. As she spoke, Robert felt the foundations of his world begin to crumble, replaced by a reality more complex and dangerous than he could have ever imagined. The game was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. The abandoned warehouse loomed over Robert and Victoria, its rusted walls a silent witness to the unfolding drama. Robert's mind reeled as he tried to process Victoria's words. The woman he had called his wife for years was now a stranger, her familiar features twisted with guilt and determination. "Start from the beginning," Robert said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I need to understand everything." Victoria took a deep breath, her eyes never leaving Robert's face. "It all started 15 years ago," she began. "I wasn't always Victoria Anderson, the successful realtor's wife. I was Sarah Blackwood, a desperate woman caught up in something much bigger than herself." As Victoria, or Sarah, spoke, Robert felt the foundations of his world crumbling beneath him. She wove a tale of a secret organization, one that specialized in creating perfect lives for wealthy clients willing to pay any price. "They approached me when I was at my lowest," Victoria continued. "I had lost everything, my job, my home, my family. They offered me a new identity, a chance to start over. All I had to do was play a role." Robert's fists clenched at his sides. "And that role was to be my wife, to pretend to love me, to raise Lily with me." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "It wasn't all pretend, Robert. I did grow to care for you, for Lily. But yes, initially it was an assignment. You were a wealthy, grieving widower looking for a fresh start. The organization saw an opportunity. The pieces started falling into place in Robert's mind. The whirlwind romance, the quick marriage, the convenient timing of it all. But one crucial question remained. "And Lily?" he asked, his voice cracking. Was she ever really my daughter?" Victoria's face crumpled. "Lily is special, Robert. More special than you could ever imagine. She's not your biological daughter, but she's not mine either. She's part of something bigger." Robert's head spun with the implications. "What do you mean, something bigger? Who is she? Where did she come from?" "Lily is what the organization calls a cipher child," Victoria explained, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "She has abilities that make her incredibly valuable to certain people." The world seemed to tilt on its axis as Robert struggled to make sense of Victoria's words. Abilities? Cipher child? It all sounded like something out of a science fiction novel. "What kind of abilities?" he demanded. Victoria shook her head. "I don't know all the details. They kept me in the dark about most of it. But I've seen things, Robert. Things that defy explanation. Lily can do things that no ordinary child should be able to do." A memory flashed in Robert's mind. Lily, just 3 years old, solving complex math problems as if they were simple addition. At the time, he had attributed it to her being a prodigy. Now, he wasn't so sure. "Why now?" Robert asked, his voice hoarse. "Why reveal all of this after 5 years?" Victoria's expression turned grim. "Because Lily's real family has come for her. The people who created her, they want her back and they're willing to do anything to get her." Robert's protective instincts flared. "No," he said firmly. "I don't care where she came from or what abilities she has. Lily is my daughter. I've raised her, loved her. I won't let anyone take her away." A sad smile played on Victoria's lips. "I knew you'd say that. It's why I've decided to help you." Robert's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "Help me? How?" Victoria reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, ornate key, identical to the one Robert had found in Lily's room. "This key opens a safety deposit box at Westfield Bank," she explained. "Inside you'll find everything I know about the organization, about Lily's origins, and about the people coming for her. It's not much, but it's a start." Robert took the key, his mind racing with questions. "Why are you doing this? Why betray the organization now?" Victoria's eyes welled with tears. "Because despite everything, I've grown to love Lily too. And you, Robert. You deserve better than the life of lies I've helped create. This is my chance to make things right." As Robert absorbed this information, a new sound cut through the tense atmosphere, the wail of police sirens in the distance, growing louder by the second. Victoria's eyes widened in panic. "You brought the police, Robert, you don't understand. If they catch me, if the organization finds out I've talked..." Robert grabbed Victoria's arm. "I didn't bring them. It must be Jack or the detectives. They must have followed me despite my instructions." Victoria pulled away, her face a mask of fear. "I have to go. Remember the key, Robert. And remember, trust no one. Not even those closest to you." Before Robert could react, Victoria turned and ran, disappearing into the shadows of the warehouse. He called after her, but his voice was drowned out by the approaching sirens. As the sound of car doors slamming and shouted orders filled the air, Robert stood alone in the empty lot, the key burning a hole in his pocket. His world had been turned upside down, everything he thought he knew revealed as an elaborate lie. But one truth remained constant: his love for Lily. Whatever she was, whoever had created her, she was his daughter, and he would move heaven and earth to keep her safe. As Detective Chen's voice called out his name, Robert steeled himself for what was to come. The game had changed, the stakes higher than he could have ever imagined. But he was ready to play. For Lily's sake, he had to be. Little did he know the revelations of this night were just the beginning. The true test of his love, his resolve, and his very understanding of reality was yet to come. The next 24 hours passed in a blur for Robert. After a grueling interrogation by the police, during which he struggled to explain his presence at the warehouse without revealing Victoria's involvement, he was finally allowed to return home. The mansion, once a symbol of his success and happiness, now felt like a mausoleum of lies. As dawn broke, Robert found himself in his study, the safety deposit box key lying on the desk before him. He hadn't slept, his mind too busy trying to reconcile the life he thought he knew with the shocking revelations Victoria had shared. A soft knock on the door startled him from his reverie. "Come in," he called, quickly pocketing the key. Jack Reeves entered, his face etched with concern. "Robert, you look like hell. Have you slept at all?" Robert shook his head. "How can I sleep, Jack? My daughter is missing, my wife is... God, I don't even know who or what Victoria really is. And now this talk of secret organizations and cipher children. It's like I've woken up in someone else's life." Jack settled into a chair across from Robert, his expression grave. "I've been doing some digging, calling in favors from old contacts. Robert, I think you need to prepare yourself. The rabbit hole goes deeper than you can imagine." Robert leaned forward, his exhaustion momentarily forgotten. "Tell me everything." Over the next hour, Jack laid out a web of information that seemed more suited to a spy thriller than real life. He spoke of shadowy government agencies, cutting-edge genetic research, and a global network of powerful individuals all vying for control of something called Project Cipher. "From what I've been able to piece together," Jack explained, "Project Cipher is a highly classified program aimed at creating enhanced human beings. Children with abilities that push the boundaries of what we thought possible." Robert's mind flashed to Lily, her incredible intelligence, her sometimes uncanny perceptiveness. "And you think Lily is one of these enhanced children?" Jack nodded solemnly. "It fits the profile. The question is, who exactly is behind Project Cipher? And why did they place Lily with you?" Robert stood abruptly, pacing the room as he tried to process this information. "None of this makes sense, Jack. I'm just a real estate developer. Why would some secret organization choose me to raise their super child?" "That's what we need to figure out," Jack replied. "There has to be a reason they picked you, Robert. Something in your past, maybe, or something about your position that made you the ideal candidate." Robert's pacing brought him to the large window overlooking the mansion's grounds. As he stared out at the manicured lawn, a memory surfaced. Lily, just last week standing in this very spot and saying something odd. "Jack," Robert said slowly, "last week Lily said something strange. She was looking out this window and she turned to me and said, 'Daddy, sometimes I see things that aren't there yet.' At the time, I thought she was just playing pretend, but now..." Jack leaned forward, his interest piqued. "What else, Robert? Has Lily ever said or done anything else unusual?" As Robert racked his brain, more memories came flooding back. Lily solving complex equations as a toddler, predicting phone calls seconds before they happened, knowing things she couldn't possibly know. "My God," Robert whispered, "how could I have been so blind?" Before Jack could respond, Robert's phone buzzed with an incoming text. He glanced at the screen, his heart skipping a beat when he saw the message. "The truth lies beneath the surface. Dig deeper, Mr. Anderson. A friend." Robert showed the message to Jack, who immediately sprang into action. This could be a trap, or it could be someone trying to help. Either way, we need to be careful. "What do you think it means?" Robert's mind raced, trying to decipher the cryptic message. Suddenly his eyes widened in realization. "The basement," he said. "There's an old bomb shelter beneath the house, left over from the Cold War era. I've never used it, but..." Without another word, Robert hurried out of the study, Jack close on his heels. They made their way to the basement, pushing aside old furniture and boxes until they found the heavy metal door leading to the bomb shelter. The door creaked open, revealing a musty, dimly lit space. As Robert's eyes adjusted to the gloom, he gasped. The walls were covered in papers, photographs, and strings connecting various points, a conspiracy theorist's dream. "What in the world?" Jack muttered, taking in the scene. Robert approached one of the walls, his heart pounding as he recognized faces in the photographs. There was Victoria, looking much younger, standing next to a group of serious-looking men in lab coats. Another photo showed a younger version of himself, though he had no memory of the image being taken. Scrawled beneath the photo in Victoria's handwriting were the words, "Subject L1L7, Project Cipher's crowning achievement." "Jack," Robert said, his voice barely above a whisper, "I think we've just scratched the surface of something much bigger than we imagined." As they stood in the bomb shelter, surrounded by the ghosts of secrets past, Robert felt a mix of dread and determination wash over him. But it was the central photograph that made Robert's blood run cold. It showed a baby in an incubator, surrounded by medical equipment. Whatever the truth was, whatever forces were at play, one thing was certain. He would stop at nothing to find Lily and protect her. Little did Robert know the threads of truth they had begun to unravel would lead them down a path more dangerous and mind-bending than anything they could have imagined. The game was changing, the players more powerful and ruthless than ever before. And at the center of it all was Lily, a child with the power to change the world for better or for worse. As Robert and Jack began to sift through the mountain of information before them, the first rays of sunlight crept through the basement windows. A new day was dawning, bringing with it the promise of answers and the threat of even greater dangers to come. The bomb shelter felt like a tomb of secrets, its musty air heavy with the weight of hidden truths. Robert and Jack had spent hours poring over the documents plastered across the walls, each revelation more shocking than the last. As the morning light filtered through the small, grimy windows, Robert sat back, his mind reeling from what they had uncovered. "I still can't believe it," he muttered, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "All this time right beneath my feet. Victoria must have been using this place as her secret command center." Jack nodded grimly, his eyes never leaving the document in his hands. "It's impressive, in a terrifying sort of way. She managed to keep all of this hidden from you for years. The question is, why reveal it now?" Robert's gaze drifted to a photo of Lily as a toddler, her bright eyes seeming to peer into his soul. She said Lily's real family was coming for her. Maybe Victoria thought it was only a matter of time before everything came to light. As Jack opened his mouth to respond, a sharp buzz cut through the air. Robert fished his phone out of his pocket, his heart racing as he saw another message from the unknown number. "Time is running out. The key to Lily's future lies in your past. Remember the cabin, Mr. Anderson?" Robert's brow furrowed in confusion. "The cabin? What cabin?" Jack leaned in, reading the message over Robert's shoulder. "Could it be referring to a property you own? Or maybe somewhere from your childhood?" As Robert racked his brain, a long-forgotten memory suddenly surfaced. Wait, there was a cabin. My parents used to take me there when I was a kid, before they passed away. It's been years since I've even thought about it. "Where is it?" Jack asked, already reaching for his coat. "Up in the mountains about 3 hours from here," Robert replied, a spark of hope igniting in his chest. "But I don't understand. What could possibly be there after all this time?" Jack's expression was grim as he headed for the door. "Only one way to find out. Let's go." The drive to the cabin was tense, filled with speculation about what they might find. As they wound their way up the mountain roads, Robert's mind drifted back to his childhood summers spent at the cabin, fishing with his father, roasting marshmallows under the stars, the scent of pine needles in the crisp mountain air. It all seemed like a lifetime ago. As they rounded the final bend, the cabin came into view. Robert's breath caught in his throat. It looked exactly as he remembered it, a quaint log structure nestled among towering pines. But something was off. "Jack," he said, his voice tight with tension, "look at the chimney, there's smoke." Jack's hand instinctively moved to where his gun would be if he were still on the force. "Someone's here. Stay behind me, Robert." They approached the cabin cautiously, gravel crunching beneath their feet. As they reached the porch, the front door suddenly swung open. Robert's heart nearly stopped. Standing in the doorway, looking older but unmistakable, was his father. "Hello, son," the man said, a sad smile playing on his lips. "I've been expecting you." Robert stumbled backward, his mind unable to process what he was seeing. "Dad? But how? You're supposed to be dead?" his father finished, his voice gentle. "I know, Robert, and I'm so sorry for the deception. But it was necessary to keep you and Lily safe." Jack stepped forward, his posture tense. "Mr. Anderson, I'm going to need you to explain what's going on here. Now." Robert's father nodded, stepping aside to allow them entry. "Of course. Please come in. It's time you learned the truth about everything." As they entered the cabin, Robert felt as though he were walking into a dream. The interior was just as he remembered. The worn leather couch, the stone fireplace, the smell of coffee brewing in the kitchen. But on the walls, alongside family photos, were documents and charts that looked eerily similar to those in the bomb shelter. His father settled into his old armchair, gesturing for Robert and Jack to sit. "I know you have 1,000 questions, son, but first I need you to understand something. Everything we did, your mother and I, and yes, even Victoria, it was all to protect you and Lily." Robert leaned forward, his voice tight with emotion. "Protect us from what, Dad? And how are you even alive?" I went to your funeral. I mourned you for years." His father's eyes filled with regret. The funeral was necessary to maintain the illusion. As for what we were protecting you from, that's a much longer story. One that begins long before you were born with a project called Cypher. As Robert's father began to weave a tale of secret government programs, genetic experiments, and a global conspiracy that spanned decades, Robert felt the foundations of his world crumbling yet again. Everything he thought he knew about his life, his family, and even his own identity was being called into question. But one thing remained clear amidst the chaos of revelations. Lily was at the center of it all, and she was in danger. "Where is she, Dad?" Robert interrupted, his voice cracking with emotion. "Where's Lily?" His father's expression grew grave. "She's safe for now, son. But not for long. The people who created her, who created all of this, they're closing in and they won't stop until they have her back." Jack, who had been silently taking in the incredible story, finally spoke up. "So, what's our next move? How do we keep Lily safe?" Robert's father stood, moving to a bookshelf and pulling out a leather-bound volume. "With this," he said, handing the book to Robert, "it's a journal I've kept for years detailing everything I know about Project Cypher and the people behind it. It's not just information, it's a roadmap to bringing down the entire operation." As Robert took the journal, its weight feeling far heavier than mere paper and leather, he realized that this was just the beginning. The search for Lily had opened a Pandora's box of secrets and lies, and the only way out was through. "All right," Robert said, his voice steady with newfound determination. "Where do we start?" His father's eyes gleamed with a mix of pride and sadness. "We start by making a plan, son, because the storm that's coming, it's going to change everything." As the three men huddled around the kitchen table, poring over the journal's cryptic contents, the wind outside began to howl. A storm was indeed coming, one that would test the limits of Robert's love, courage, and understanding of the world itself. And somewhere out there, little Lily waited, her incredible gifts both a blessing and a curse, the key to a future that hung in the balance. The race to save her, and perhaps the world, had only just begun. The cabin's old wooden clock ticked steadily, marking the passage of time as Robert, his father, and Jack pored over the leather-bound journal. Outside, the wind had picked up, whistling through the pine trees and adding an eerie backdrop to the already surreal situation. "So let me get this straight," Robert said, rubbing his temples in an attempt to ward off an impending headache. "Project Cypher isn't just about creating enhanced children. It's about shaping the future of humanity itself." His father nodded, gravely. "That's right. The people behind Cypher believe they're working towards a better world, one where human potential is pushed to its absolute limits, but their methods are completely unethical and dangerous," Jack finished, his voice tight with barely contained anger. Robert's father sighed heavily. "Yes, and Lily. Lily is their crowning achievement. She represents the pinnacle of what they've been working towards for decades." Robert's mind reeled as he tried to process the implications. His little girl, with her bright smile and infectious laugh, was apparently the key to unlocking humanity's next evolutionary step. It seemed impossible, and yet, "The things she can do," Robert murmured, almost to himself. "The way she sometimes knows things she couldn't possibly know. It all makes a twisted kind of sense now." Jack leaned forward, his detective instincts kicking into high gear. "What I don't understand is why they let you raise her, Robert. Why not keep her in a lab somewhere under constant observation?" Robert's father stood up, moving to the cabin's small kitchenette to pour more coffee. "That's where it gets complicated," he explained. "The scientists behind Cypher discovered something unexpected. The enhanced abilities they engineered, precognition, advanced problem-solving, even limited telekinesis, they're intrinsically linked to emotional development." "What do you mean?" Robert asked, accepting a steaming mug from his father. "They found that children raised in sterile laboratory environments didn't develop their abilities to nearly the same degree as those raised in loving homes. Emotion, it turns out, is the key to unlocking their full potential." Robert's heart clenched as he thought of Lily. "So they placed her with me, because they knew I would love her?" His father's eyes softened. "Yes, son. They chose you because they knew you had the capacity to provide the love and stability Lily needed to truly thrive. Your history, losing your first wife, your successful business, your desire for a family, it made you the perfect candidate." A surge of conflicting emotions washed over Robert. Anger at being manipulated, fear for Lily's safety, and underneath it all an unshakable love for the little girl he had raised as his own. "It doesn't matter why they chose me," he said firmly. "Lily is my daughter, no matter where she came from, and I'll do whatever it takes to keep her safe." Jack nodded approvingly. "That's the spirit. Now what's our next move?" "We can't stay hidden in this cabin forever." Robert's father retrieved a small device from a hidden compartment in the wall. It looked like a cross between a compass and a smartphone. "This is a tracker," he explained. "It's tuned to Lily's unique genetic signature. With this, we can find her anywhere in the world." Robert reached for the device, hope blossoming in his chest, but his father held it back. "It's not that simple, son. Using this will alert Cypher to our location. Once we activate it, we'll have a very small window to reach Lily before they do." The gravity of the situation settled over the room. This wasn't just about finding Lily anymore. It was about outmaneuvering a powerful organization with seemingly limitless resources. "We need a plan," Jack said, his tactical mind already working. "And we need allies. This is too big for just the three of us to handle." Robert's father nodded in agreement. "I have some contacts, other parents of Cypher children who've gone into hiding. They might be willing to help." As they began to formulate a strategy, Robert's phone buzzed with an incoming message. His heart raced as he read the text. "Daddy, I'm scared. The shadows are getting closer. Please hurry." Robert showed the message to the others, his hands shaking. "It's from Lily. How is this possible? How does she know how to contact me?" His father's expression was a mix of awe and concern. "It's her abilities manifesting. She must be sensing the danger around her and reaching out instinctively. Robert, we're running out of time." The urgency of the situation spurred them into action. Over the next few hours, they put together a daring plan. Jack would reach out to his old law enforcement contacts, gathering intel on Cypher's operations. Robert's father would activate his network of hidden allies, preparing safe houses and escape routes. And Robert would be the bait. "It's the only way," he insisted, overriding the objections of both Jack and his father. "They'll be expecting me to come for Lily. We can use that to our advantage." As dawn broke over the mountains, casting long shadows across the cabin's worn floorboards, the three men made their final preparations. Robert stood by the window, watching the sun rise and thinking of Lily. "Hold on, sweetheart," he thought fiercely. "Daddy's coming." Just as they were about to leave, a sharp knock at the door froze them in their tracks. Jack reached for his gun, while Robert's father moved silently towards the hidden compartment where he kept the tracker. Robert approached the door cautiously, his heart pounding. He opened it slowly, prepared for anything. What he saw made his blood run cold. Standing on the porch, her blonde hair whipping in the mountain wind, was Victoria. And in her arms, looking small and frightened but blessedly alive, was Lily. "Hello, Robert," Victoria said, her voice tight with emotion. "I think it's time we finished this, don't you?" As Lily's eyes met Robert's, filled with a mixture of fear and hope, he knew that the final act of this incredible drama was about to unfold. Whatever came next would determine not just Lily's fate, but potentially the future of humanity itself. The stage was set, the players were in position, and the clock was ticking. The mountain air crackled with tension as Robert stared at Victoria and Lily, framed in the cabin's doorway. For a moment, time seemed to stand still, the only sound the whisper of wind through the pines. "Daddy!" Lily cried, breaking the spell. She squirmed in Victoria's arms, reaching out for Robert. Robert's heart clenched. He took a step forward, every fiber of his being screaming to grab Lily and run. But Victoria's steady gaze held him back. "Not so fast, Robert," she said, her voice calm but firm. "We have a lot to discuss." From inside the cabin, Jack's voice rang out. "Let the girl go, Victoria. You're outnumbered here." Victoria's lips curled into a sad smile. "Am I? I think you'll find the situation is a bit more complicated than that." As if on cue, the sound of approaching vehicles filled the air. Robert's father appeared at his side, his face grim. "We've got company," he muttered. "Looks like Cypher found us after all." Robert's mind raced. This was all going wrong. The plan they'd spent hours crafting was crumbling before it even began. "Victoria," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Whatever's going on, whatever Cypher has on you, we can figure this out. Just let me have Lily." Please." For a moment, Victoria's composure cracked. Robert saw a flicker of the woman he thought he'd known, the woman he'd built a life with. "Oh, Robert," she sighed, "if only it were that simple." Before anyone could react, Victoria stepped into the cabin, still holding Lily close. "We don't have much time," she said urgently. "Cypher's team will be here any minute. If we're going to save Lily, we need to work together." Jack emerged from the shadows, his gun trained on Victoria. "Give me one good reason why we should trust you." Victoria met his gaze unflinchingly. "Because I'm the only one who knows the full extent of Cypher's plans. And because—" She paused, looking down at Lily with genuine affection. "Because I've grown to love her too." The roar of engines grew louder. Robert's father moved to the window, peering out cautiously. 6 SUVs, heavily tinted. "This isn't a capture team, this is an extraction." Robert felt a chill run down his spine. He looked at Lily, her small face a mixture of confusion and fear. Whatever happened next, he had to protect her. "All right," he said, making a split-second decision. "Victoria, start talking, fast." As Victoria launched into a rapid explanation of Cypher's immediate plans for Lily, Robert's mind whirred. She spoke of a hidden facility, of experiments designed to push Lily's abilities to their limits, of a timetable that had suddenly accelerated. "They're not just after Lily," Victoria explained, her words tumbling out in a rush. "They're after all the Cypher children. They believe they're on the brink of a breakthrough, something that could change the course of human evolution. But the process, it could destroy the children's minds." Robert felt sick. "And you were part of this? All this time?" Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "I was. But seeing Lily grow, watching her become this amazing little person, it changed everything. I couldn't let them take her." The sound of car doors slamming outside spurred them into action. Jack moved swiftly, securing the cabin's entrances. Robert's father retrieved a hidden cache of weapons, remnants of his own shadowy past. "We need to get to the tunnels," Robert's father said, moving a large bookcase to reveal a hidden passage. "There's an exit that leads to the other side of the mountain. We might be able to lose them there." As they prepared to make their escape, a loud bang echoed through the cabin. The front door shuddered under the impact of a battering ram. "Time's up," Jack growled. "Let's move." Robert reached for Lily, and this time Victoria let her go. As he held his daughter close, feeling her small arms wrapped tightly around his neck, Robert made a silent vow. No matter what happened, no matter what it cost him, he would keep Lily safe. They plunged into the darkness of the tunnel, the sounds of pursuit fading behind them. The passage was narrow and damp, the air thick with the scent of earth and stone. Lily clung to Robert, her face buried in his shoulder. "It's okay, sweetheart," he murmured, trying to project a calm he didn't feel. "Daddy's got you. Everything's going to be all right." As they navigated the twisting tunnel, guided by the beam of a single flashlight, Robert's mind raced. Even if they managed to evade Cypher's team, where could they go? How could they hope to protect Lily from an organization with seemingly limitless resources? The tunnel began to slope upward, and a faint glimmer of light appeared ahead. They were nearing the exit, but as they approached, a new sound reached their ears, the rhythmic thump of helicopter blades. "They've got air support," Jack hissed. "This just got a whole lot more complicated." They paused at the tunnel's mouth, assessing their options. The forest stretched out before them, offering potential cover, but the helicopter's searchlight swept back and forth, illuminating patches of the dense foliage. Victoria stepped forward, her face set with determination. "I have an idea," she said, "but you're not going to like it." As she outlined her plan, Robert felt a mix of admiration and fear. It was dangerous, possibly suicidal, but it might just give them the edge they needed. "Are you sure about this?" he asked Victoria, searching her face for any sign of deception. She met his gaze steadily. "No," she admitted, "but it's the best chance we've got." As the group prepared to put Victoria's risky plan into action, Robert held Lily close one last time. "I love you, sweetheart," he whispered, "more than anything in this world." Lily looked up at him, her eyes shining with a wisdom beyond her years. "I know, Daddy," she said softly, "and I love you too. No matter what happens." With those words echoing in his heart, Robert stepped out of the tunnel and into the unknown. Whatever came next, he was ready to face it. For Lily, for the future, for the chance to make things right. The final act was about to begin. and the stakes couldn't be higher. The forest was a cacophony of sound and shadow. Helicopter blades chopped through the air, searchlights cutting swaths through the darkness. On the ground, shouts and the crackle of radio communication punctuated the night. Robert crouched behind a fallen log, his heart pounding. Lily was pressed against his side, her small hand gripping his tightly. The others were scattered nearby, hidden in the underbrush. They were surrounded, outgunned, and running out of options. But they had one card left to play. Victoria's plan was audacious, bordering on insane, but as Robert watched the Cypher teams closing in, he knew it was their only shot. "Are you ready?" he whispered to Lily. She nodded, her eyes wide but determined. "I'm scared, Daddy, but I can do it." Robert's chest swelled with a mixture of pride and fear. "I know you can, sweetheart, just like we practiced, okay?" Lily took a deep breath and closed her eyes. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the air around them began to shimmer, like heat rising from hot pavement. Victoria had explained Lily's most extraordinary ability, the power to manipulate perception. With concentration, she could create illusions, bending light and sound to mask their presence. It was this power that Cypher coveted most, the potential applications of which were staggering. As the shimmer intensified, Robert felt a wave of disorientation wash over him. He blinked, and suddenly the forest around them seemed to shift and warp. Where there had been 5 people hiding in the underbrush, there now appeared to be a whole squad of armed individuals. The illusion was perfect, down to the smallest detail. Robert could hardly believe his eyes, and he knew it was happening. For the Cypher teams closing in, the effect would be thoroughly convincing. "Now!" Jack's voice hissed from nearby. They burst from cover, Lily's illusory army surging forward with them. The Cypher teams reacted with shock and confusion, their well-coordinated advance dissolving into chaos. Robert scooped Lily into his arms and ran, trusting in her power to keep them hidden amidst the phantom soldiers. Around them, the night erupted into a firefight, but the bullets were flying wide, targeting illusions rather than flesh and blood. They sprinted through the trees, the sounds of combat fading behind them. Robert's lungs burned, his legs ached, but he pushed on. Freedom was so close he could taste it. And then, without warning, they burst into a clearing. And there, sleek and silent, sat a black helicopter. Its rotors were already spinning up, and a figure stood silhouetted in the open door. "Impressive," a smooth voice called out over the growing roar. "But did you really think we wouldn't be prepared for Lily's abilities?" The man stepped into the light and Robert felt his blood run cold. He recognized that face from the photos in the bomb shelter, Dr. Elliot Pierce, the mastermind behind Project Cypher. "It's over," Pierce said, his tone almost regretful. "You've put up an admirable fight, but it's time to accept reality. Lily belongs with us. Her potential is too great to waste on a normal life." Robert set Lily down but kept her close, shielding her with his body. "She's a child," he growled. "Not a lab experiment, not a weapon. A little girl who deserves to grow up happy and free." Pierce sighed, shaking his head. "You don't understand. The work we're doing will change the world. Lily is the key to unlocking humanity's full potential. The sacrifices are regrettable but necessary." "Necessary?" Victoria's voice rang out as she emerged from the trees, Jack and Robert's father close behind. "You're talking about torturing children, about playing God. Where does it end, Elliot?" Pierce's eyes narrowed. "It ends with a better world, Victoria, a world you once believed in. Don't tell me you've lost sight of the bigger picture." As the adults argued, Robert felt a tug on his sleeve. He looked down to see Lily staring up at him, her eyes shining with an otherworldly light. "Daddy," she whispered, "I can see it." "See what, sweetheart?" "The future. All the futures. So many paths." Her voice trailed off, her gaze becoming distant. Robert's heart raced. Was this another manifestation of Lily's powers, or something more? Suddenly, Lily stepped forward, her small voice ringing out with surprising authority. "Stop!" Everyone fell silent, turning to look at the little girl standing in the center of the clearing. "I've seen what happens," Lily said, her voice trembling slightly but growing stronger with each word. "I've seen the world you want to create, Dr. Pierce. It's not better. It's cold and scary, and people aren't people anymore. They're just tools." Pierce's composure cracked, a look of hunger entering his eyes. "You've seen it? Lily, tell me more." What else did you see? But Lily shook her head. I won't help you. I don't want that future. I want... She turned, looking up at Robert with love shining in her eyes. I want my family. I want to grow up and decide for myself who I want to be. A tense silence fell over the clearing. Robert could see the calculations running behind Pierce's eyes, the man's ambition warring with the unexpected challenge from a 5-year-old girl. And then, several things happened at once. Pierce lunged forward, reaching for Lily. Robert moved to intercept him, his protective instincts kicking into overdrive. Victoria shouted a warning. Jack's gun appeared in his hand. But it was Lily who acted fastest. She raised her small hands, and the air around them seemed to ripple and tear. For a breathless moment, Robert felt as though he were looking through a window into another world, a swirling vortex of possibilities and paths not taken. And then, as quickly as it had appeared, the rift vanished. Pierce stumbled, his eyes wide with shock. The helicopter's engines sputtered and died. What did you do?" Pierce gasped. Lily's voice was calm, almost serene. "I chose. I saw all the futures and I chose this one, where Project Cypher ends and we all get a chance to live our own lives." As if in response to her words, the distant sound of sirens filled the air. Real sirens, not an illusion. "That'll be the authorities," Jack said, a grim smile on his face. "Seems someone tipped them off about some illegal activities in these woods. Funny how that works." Pierce's face contorted with rage and disbelief. "This isn't over," he snarled. "You have no idea of the forces you're dealing with. We'll—" But whatever threat he was about to make was cut off as Robert's fist connected with his jaw, sending him sprawling to the ground. "No," Robert said firmly. "It is over. Lily's made her choice, and so have I." As the sound of approaching vehicles grew louder, Robert knelt down and gathered Lily into his arms. She clung to him, suddenly just a tired little girl after her extraordinary display of power. "Let's go home, sweetheart," he murmured. Lily nodded against his shoulder. "Home," she repeated softly. "That sounds nice." As they made their way out of the clearing, leaving Pierce and the remnants of Project Cypher to face justice, Robert felt a profound sense of both ending and beginning. The nightmare was over, but the road ahead was uncertain. One thing, however, was crystal clear. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, as a family. The first light of dawn was breaking over the mountains as they emerged from the woods. A new day full of possibility and hope, and for Robert and Lily, a chance to write their own future, free from the shadows of the past. The days following the confrontation in the forest passed in a blur of debriefings, legal proceedings, and media frenzy. Robert, Lily, and the others found themselves at the center of a storm that threatened to overwhelm them. But through it all, they clung to each other, a makeshift family forged in the crucible of extraordinary circumstances. 2 weeks after that fateful night, Robert sat in the living room of a safe house provided by the authorities. Lily was curled up beside him, her head resting on his lap as she napped. The TV droned softly in the background, reporting on the ongoing investigation into Project Cypher. And in breaking news, Dr. Elliot Pierce, the alleged mastermind behind the controversial Project Cypher, has agreed to cooperate with authorities in exchange for leniency. Sources close to the investigation suggest that Pierce's testimony could implicate several high-ranking government officials. Robert muted the TV, not wanting the noise to wake Lily. He gazed down at his daughter, marveling at how peaceful she looked in sleep. It was hard to believe that this small girl held such extraordinary powers. A soft knock at the door roused him from his reverie. Jack entered, looking tired but determined. "How are you holding up?" Jack asked, settling into an armchair across from Robert. Robert shrugged. "As well as can be expected, I suppose. It's a lot to process." Jack nodded sympathetically. "I can only imagine, but I've got some news that might help. The DA's office has officially dropped all charges against you and Victoria. They're classifying you as victims in this whole mess." Relief washed over Robert. He'd been worried about potential legal repercussions, especially given his unwitting involvement in Project Cypher. "That's good to hear," he said. "Any word on what's going to happen with the other Cypher children?" Jack's expression turned grim. "It's complicated. The government's scrambling to contain the situation. There's talk of a special program to help the children integrate into society, but it's all very hush-hush." Robert's arms tightened protectively around Lily. And Lily? What about her? As far as the official record is concerned, Lily is your daughter, period, Jack assured him. Her abilities are classified at the highest level. As long as you keep things under wraps, you should be able to give her a normal life. The word normal hung in the air between them. Could life ever truly be normal after everything they'd been through? As if sensing the direction of Robert's thoughts, Jack leaned forward. Listen, Robert, I know this is overwhelming, but you're not alone in this. You've got me, your father, even Victoria. We're all here to help. Robert nodded gratefully. Speaking of Victoria, have you heard from her? Jack hesitated. She's cooperating with the authorities, providing information on Cypher's operations. It's complicated. She did a lot of questionable things, but she also helped bring down the organization in the end. A mixture of emotions swirled in Robert's chest. Anger, betrayal, but also a lingering affection for the woman who had been his wife and Lily's mother figure for years. Do you think we'll see her again? He asked softly. Jack shrugged. Hard to say, but if I were a betting man, I'd say yes. She cares about Lily too much to stay away forever. Their conversation was interrupted by a small yawn. Lily stirred, blinking sleepily up at Robert. Hey there, sleepyhead, Robert said, smiling down at her. Have a good nap? Lily nodded, then her eyes widened as she spotted Jack. Uncle Jack, you're here. Jack grinned, reaching out to ruffle Lily's hair. Sure am, kiddo, just checking in on my favorite dynamic duo. As Lily chatted animatedly with Jack, Robert felt a wave of love and protectiveness wash over him. Despite everything, the lies, the danger, the upheaval, this was his family, and he would do anything to protect it. Later that evening, after Lily had gone to bed, Robert stood on the safe house's small balcony, gazing out at the city lights. He heard the sliding door open behind him and turned to see his father step out. Penny for your thoughts? His father asked, joining him at the railing. Robert sighed, just thinking about the future, about how to give Lily a normal life after all this. His father was quiet for a moment. Normal is overrated, son. What Lily needs is love, support, and guidance. The rest, well, you'll figure it out together. I just worry, Robert admitted. Her powers, the people who might still be looking for her. How do I protect her from all that? His father placed a hand on Robert's shoulder. You do it one day at a time, and you remember that you're not alone. We're all in this together. As they stood there in companionable silence, Robert felt a sense of peace settle over him. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges he could scarcely imagine, but he wasn't walking it alone. Inside, Lily slept peacefully, her dreams unmarred by visions of possible futures, and for now that was enough. The next chapter of their lives was about to begin. It would be different, challenging, perhaps even dangerous at times, but it would be theirs. And Robert was ready to face whatever came next, with Lily by his side and their makeshift family supporting them every step of the way. As the city hummed with life below them, father and son stood vigil, guardians of a future that was still being written, a future full of possibilities, both wondrous and terrifying, a future that, thanks to Lily's choice, was now theirs to shape. 6 months had passed since the night in the forest that had changed everything. Summer had given way to fall, and now winter was settling in, bringing with it a blanket of snow that transformed the city into a glittering wonderland. Robert stood at the window of their new home, a modest but comfortable house in a quiet suburb. He watched as Lily, bundled up against the cold, built a snowman in the front yard. Her laughter carried through the glass, bringing a smile to his face. So much had changed, and yet in moments like these it felt as though they'd found a new kind of normal. The sound of the doorbell jolted Robert from his reverie. He opened the front door to find Jack standing there, a thick file tucked under his arm. "Merry Christmas, Robert," Jack said, stamping the snow from his boots as he entered. "Merry Christmas," Robert replied, taking Jack's coat. "What brings you out on Christmas Eve? I thought you'd be with your family." Jack's expression turned serious. "Got some news I thought you should hear right away. Is Lily outside building a snowman?" Robert assured him. "What's going on?" They moved to the kitchen, where Robert poured them both cups of steaming coffee. Jack opened the file, spreading several documents across the table. "The investigation into Project Cypher is officially closed," Jack began. "Most of the key players are behind bars or have turned state's evidence, but there's more." Robert leaned forward, his heart rate picking up. What is it? We've identified most of the other Cypher children, Jack said, and we've set up a support network for them and their families. Counseling, medical care, education plans tailored to their unique needs. I wanted you to know that Lily won't be alone in this. Relief washed over Robert. The thought of Lily facing her challenges in isolation had been weighing on him heavily. That's incredible, Jack, thank you. Jack nodded, then hesitated before continuing. There's one more thing, it's about Victoria. Robert tensed. Victoria's absence had been a constant ache, despite everything that had happened. What about her? She's completed her cooperation with the authorities. In light of her assistance in bringing down Cypher, she's been granted immunity. She's free, Robert. A tumult of emotions surged through Robert. Relief, anger, longing, fear. Has she said anything about seeing Lily? Jack finished gently. She's expressed interest, but she's leaving it up to you. She understands the magnitude of what she did, the trust she broke. She doesn't want to disrupt Lily's life any further, unless you're comfortable with it. Robert's mind raced. Could he let Victoria back into their lives after everything that had happened? Could he deny Lily the chance to have a relationship with the woman who, despite it all, had been a mother to her for years? Before he could respond, the back door burst open, and Lily tumbled in, cheeks rosy from the cold. "Daddy! Uncle Jack! Come see my snowman! I made him special!" The adults exchanged a look, their serious conversation put on hold. They followed Lily outside, where she proudly presented her creation. Robert's breath caught in his throat. The snowman was perfectly formed, every detail exquisite. But what made it truly remarkable were the eyes. Two perfect spheres of ice that seemed to glow from within, refracting the winter sunlight in impossible patterns. "Do you like it?" Lily asked, her voice small and unsure. Robert knelt down beside her, pulling her into a tight hug. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. Absolutely beautiful." Over Lily's shoulder, he met Jack's gaze. They both understood the implications. Lily's powers were growing, evolving in ways they couldn't predict. As they headed back inside, Robert's mind whirred with possibilities and concerns. How would Lily's abilities continue to develop? How could he guide her, protect her, while still allowing her the freedom to grow? Later that night, after Lily had gone to bed, vibrating with excitement for Santa's arrival, Robert sat in the living room nursing a glass of whiskey. The Christmas tree twinkled in the corner, surrounded by presents, a scene of perfect normalcy that belied the extraordinary nature of their lives. He pulled out his phone, staring at Victoria's number. His thumb hovered over the call button. In that moment of indecision, a small voice came from the hallway. "Daddy?" Robert looked up to see Lily standing there in her pajamas, clutching her favorite stuffed animal. "What is it, sweetheart? Can't sleep?" Lily padded over to him, climbing into his lap. "I had a dream about Mommy Victoria." Robert's heart clenched. "Oh? What happened in the dream?" Lily's brow furrowed in concentration. She was sad and scared, but she wanted to come home. Robert studied his daughter's face, wondering not for the first time how much her visions showed her, how much she truly understood. "Would you like that?" he asked softly. "If Victoria came to visit sometime." Lily nodded, her eyes bright. "I miss her, even though she did bad things. Is that okay?" Robert hugged her close, his heart overflowing with love for this extraordinary child. "Of course it's okay, sweetheart. Feelings are complicated sometimes. We can miss people even when they've hurt us." As Lily drifted off to sleep in his arms, Robert made a decision. He reached for his phone and typed out a message to Victoria. "Merry Christmas. Lily misses you. Maybe we could talk about arranging a visit in the new year." He hit send before he could second-guess himself. Whatever came next, they would face it together, as a family, in all its complex, unconventional, beautiful forms. As the clock struck midnight, ushering in Christmas Day, Robert felt a sense of hope bloom in his chest. The future was uncertain, filled with challenges and wonders he could scarcely imagine, but with Lily by his side and their extended family supporting them, he was ready to face whatever came next. The snow fell softly outside, blanketing the world in pristine white. A new day, a new year, a new chapter in their extraordinary lives was about to begin, and Robert couldn't wait to see what it would bring. The new year dawned crisp and clear, bringing with it a sense of possibility that Robert hadn't felt in months. As January rolled into February, life settled into a rhythm that was both familiar and entirely new. Lily had returned to school, attending a small private institution that could accommodate her unique needs. Robert marveled at her resilience, watching her navigate the complexities of friendship and learning with a maturity beyond her years. On a brisk Saturday morning in early March, Robert stood in the kitchen, absently stirring his coffee as he gazed out the window. Lily was in the backyard, playing with a group of neighborhood children. To any casual observer, it was a scene of perfect normalcy. But Robert knew better. He saw the slight shimmer in the air around Lily when she got excited, the way small objects sometimes seemed to shift in her presence. Her powers were growing, evolving in ways that both thrilled and terrified him. A knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. Taking a deep breath, he went to answer it, knowing who he would find on the other side. Victoria stood on the porch, looking both familiar and strange. Gone was the polished realtor's wife. In her place stood a woman who seemed softer somehow, more real. "Hello, Robert," she said, her voice tinged with nervousness. "Thank you for agreeing to this." Robert nodded, stepping aside to let her in. "Lily's excited to see you," he said, his tone carefully neutral. As if on cue, Lily's voice rang out from the backyard. "Daddy, can I have some juice for me and my friends?" "Coming, sweetheart," Robert called back. He turned to Victoria. "Would you like to take it out to her?" Victoria's eyes widened with surprise and gratitude. "I'd love to." Robert watched from the kitchen window as Victoria carried a tray of juice boxes into the backyard. Lily's reaction was immediate and heartwarming. She launched herself into Victoria's arms, hugging her tightly. As the other children gathered around, curious about the newcomer, Robert saw Lily whisper something in Victoria's ear. Victoria's expression shifted from joy to amazement, and she looked up, meeting Robert's gaze through the window with a mix of wonder and trepidation. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of activity. The children played, Victoria helping to referee games and offer snacks. Robert hovered on the periphery, torn between joining in and maintaining a cautious distance. As lunchtime approached, the other children began to disperse, heading home for their midday meals. Soon only Robert, Victoria, and Lily remained in the backyard. An awkward silence fell over the trio. Lily, sensing the tension, looked between the two adults. "Can we have a picnic?" she asked, her voice hopeful. "Like we used to." Robert and Victoria exchanged a glance, years of shared history and recent pain passing between them in an instant. "That sounds like a wonderful idea," Victoria said softly. "If it's okay with your father." Robert nodded, managing a small smile. "Sure, why not? I'll grab some sandwiches and drinks." As they settled onto a blanket in the dappled shade of the old oak tree, Robert couldn't help but feel a sense of déjà vu. How many weekends had they spent just like this, in what he now knew was a carefully constructed facsimile of family life? But as he watched Lily chattering excitedly to Victoria about school and her friends, he realized something important. The love in this makeshift family might have been built on a foundation of lies, but it had grown into something real and precious. "So," Victoria said during a lull in the conversation, her eyes meeting Robert's, "how are you really doing with all of this?" Robert considered the question, absently picking at the grass. "It's challenging," he admitted. "Trying to give Lily a normal life while helping her understand and control her abilities. Some days I feel completely out of my depth." Victoria nodded sympathetically. "I can only imagine. Is there anything I can do to help?" The offer hung in the air between them, loaded with implications. Robert studied Victoria's face, searching for any hint of deception. But all he saw was genuine concern and a deep love for Lily. "Actually," he said slowly, "there might be. You understand Lily's abilities better than anyone. If you're willing, maybe you could help us navigate this unique situation." Victoria's eyes widened with surprise and hope. "I'd like that," she said softly. "Very much." As the afternoon wore on, the tension gradually eased. They talked about Lily's progress in school, her growing powers, and the challenges that lay ahead. It wasn't quite like old times, but it was something new and potentially valuable. As the sun began to dip towards the horizon, casting long shadows across the yard, Lily yawned widely. "I'm tired," she announced, snuggling up between Robert and Victoria. Robert stroked her hair gently. I think it's time we headed inside, sweetheart. Say goodbye to Victoria. Lily looked up at Victoria, her eyes suddenly serious. You'll come back, right? You promise? Victoria glanced at Robert, seeking permission. At his slight nod, she smiled at Lily. I promise, sweetie. As long as your dad says it's okay, I'll be here. As Victoria gathered her things to leave, Robert walked her to the door. They stood on the porch for a moment, the weight of unspoken words hanging between them. Thank you for today, Victoria said finally. It means more than I can say. Robert nodded, his expression thoughtful. We've got a long way to go, he said. There's a lot of trust to rebuild, but for Lily's sake, I'm willing to try if you are. Victoria's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. I am. I really am. As she turned to go, Robert called after her. Victoria, next time, maybe you could stay for dinner. The smile that lit up her face was answer enough. Later that night, as Robert tucked Lily into bed, she looked up at him with those wise eyes that sometimes seemed to see right through him. Daddy, she said sleepily, I'm glad Mommy Victoria came today. It felt right. Robert kissed her forehead gently. I'm glad too, sweetheart. Now get some sleep. We've got a busy day tomorrow. As he closed Lily's door, Robert felt a sense of peace settle over him. The road ahead was still uncertain, filled with challenges he could scarcely imagine. But today had shown him that healing was possible, that bridges could be rebuilt. Whatever the future held, they would face it together, a family redefined but stronger for having weathered the storm. The years seemed to fly by in a whirlwind of ordinary moments and extraordinary discoveries. Lily grew from a precocious child into a remarkable young woman, her powers evolving in ways that continually amazed and sometimes frightened those around her. On the eve of Lily's 18th birthday, Robert stood in the backyard of their home, watching as his daughter effortlessly manipulated the reality around her. The air shimmered and danced, forming intricate patterns and impossible shapes that defied the laws of physics. Victoria stood beside him, her hand resting lightly on his arm. Over the years, they had forged a new kind of relationship, not quite the marriage they once had, but a deep partnership built on shared experiences and a mutual love for Lily. It's incredible, Victoria murmured, her eyes fixed on Lily. I never imagined she'd be capable of this level of control. Robert nodded, a mixture of pride and concern etched on his face. She's come so far, but I worry about what comes next, Victoria finished. Me too. As if sensing their conversation, Lily turned to them, the swirling patterns of energy dissipating around her. She walked over, her smile bright, but tinged with a hint of nervousness. So, she said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, I guess it's time we talked about college, huh? Robert and Victoria exchanged a glance. They had known this day was coming, but that didn't make it any easier. Sweetheart, Robert began, you know we support you in whatever you choose, but with your abilities, we just want to make sure you're safe, Victoria added gently, and that you're making the choice that's right for you, not just what you think we want. Lily's expression turned serious. I know, and I've given it a lot of thought. That's why I wanted to show you something. She led them to the old oak tree that had been a constant presence throughout her childhood. Placing her hand on the gnarled trunk, Lily closed her eyes in concentration. Suddenly, the world around them seemed to shift and blur. Robert and Victoria gasped as multiple versions of the backyard overlapped and intertwined, each one slightly different. In one, the tree was in full bloom despite the autumn chill. In another, it was winter, snow blanketing the ground. Lily, Robert breathed. What is this? Lily opened her eyes, a look of calm determination on her face. These are possibilities, she explained. Different paths, different choices. I can see them all now, and I think I can navigate between them. Victoria's eyes widened in understanding. You're saying you can, what? Travel between realities? Lily nodded. Something like that. It's hard to explain, but I can feel the connections between these different versions of our world, and I think I'm meant to explore them. Robert felt a wave of dizziness wash over him as he tried to comprehend the implications of what Lily was saying. But how? Where would you go? How would we know you're safe? Lily took her father's hand, her touch grounding him in the midst of the swirling realities around them. I'm not sure of all the details yet, she admitted. But I know this is what I'm meant to do. It's like the universe is calling to me, Dad, showing me that there's so much more out there to discover. As the alternate realities faded away, leaving them standing in their familiar backyard, Robert felt a complex mix of emotions wash over him. Pride in the incredible young woman Lily had become, fear for the unknown dangers she might face, and a deep aching sadness at the realization that his little girl was about to embark on a journey he couldn't fully share or protect her from. Victoria, sensing his turmoil, squeezed his arm gently. "Lily," she said, her voice steady despite the tears shimmering in her eyes, it's beyond anything we could have imagined for you. But are you sure this is what you want?" Lily nodded, her expression a mixture of excitement and resolve. "I am. I know it's scary, and I know it means I won't be around as much, but this feels right. Like it's what I've been preparing for all these years." Robert took a deep breath, trying to center himself. "When would you leave?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "After my birthday," Lily said softly. "I thought maybe we could have one last normal celebration together. And then you'll go explore the multiverse," Robert finished, a hint of wonder creeping into his voice despite his apprehension. The next day, Lily's 18th birthday dawned bright and clear. The house was filled with the sounds of laughter and celebration as friends and family gathered to mark the occasion. Jack was there, his hair now streaked with grey, but his eyes as sharp as ever. Robert's father sat in a place of honor, beaming with pride at his granddaughter. As Lily blew out the candles on her cake, Robert caught Victoria's eye across the room. They shared a moment of understanding, of shared joy tinged with the bittersweet knowledge of what was to come. Later that evening, as the party wound down and guests began to depart, Robert found Lily standing alone on the back porch, gazing up at the stars. "Hey there, birthday girl," he said softly, coming to stand beside her. "Penny for your thoughts?" Lily leaned her head on his shoulder, a gesture that reminded Robert powerfully of the little girl she had once been. "Just thinking about everything," she said. "How far we've come. How much has changed." Robert put his arm around her, pulling her close. "I'm so proud of you, Lily. You know that, right? No matter what happens, no matter where your journey takes you, I will always be proud of you." Lily looked up at him, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I love you, Dad, and I promise, no matter how far I go or what amazing things I see, I'll always come home." As they stood there, father and daughter, the night sky seemed to shimmer with possibilities. Robert thought of all they had been through, the lies, the danger, the incredible revelations. And yet through it all, love had remained constant. Love had seen them through. The next morning dawned misty and cool. Robert, Victoria, and Lily stood in the backyard, the air thick with unspoken emotions. "Are you sure you have everything you need?" Victoria asked, fussing with Lily's backpack. Lily nodded, her expression a mix of excitement and nervous anticipation. "I think so, but where I'm going, I'm not sure what I'll need." Robert stepped forward, pulling Lily into a tight embrace. "Just remember," he whispered fiercely, "no matter what incredible things you see out there, no matter what you become, you'll always be our little girl, and this will always be your home." Lily hugged him back just as tightly. "I know, Dad, I love you both so much." As she stepped back, Lily took a deep breath and closed her eyes. The air around her began to shimmer and twist, reality bending to her will. A gateway seemed to open before her, a swirling vortex of light and possibility. Lily turned back one last time, her smile radiant. "I'll be back before you know it," she said, "and wait until you hear the stories I'll have to tell." And with that, she stepped into the portal. There was a flash of light, a rush of wind, and then silence. Lily was gone, off to explore realms and realities beyond imagination. Robert and Victoria stood there for a long moment, hands clasped tightly together, staring at the spot where their daughter had vanished. The backyard seemed impossibly empty without her presence, but as they turned to head back inside, Robert felt a sense of peace wash over him. Lily was embarking on an incredible journey, one that would shape not just her future, but potentially the future of countless realities. And though he would miss her fiercely, he knew that she carried with her the most important thing of all, the love of her family, a beacon to light her way through whatever wonders and challenges lay ahead. As they reached the back door, Victoria paused, looking up at Robert with a small smile. "So," she said, her voice thick with emotion but tinged with hope, "what do we do now?" Robert took a deep breath, gazing out at the backyard where so much of their extraordinary story had unfolded. "Now," he said softly, "we wait, we hope. And we trust that wherever Lily's journey takes her, the love we've given her will be enough to bring her home again." Hand in hand, they stepped into the house, ready to face whatever the future might hold. For they had learned, through all their trials and triumphs, that love was the greatest power of all, a force that could transcend lies, overcome danger, and bridge the gaps between worlds. And somewhere out there, in the vast tapestry of realities, Lily Anderson was just beginning to explore the infinite possibilities that awaited her. A year had passed since Lily stepped through the shimmering portal in the backyard, venturing into the unknown expanses of the multiverse. For Robert and Victoria, time seemed to move both slowly and quickly, each day filled with a mixture of hope and worry for their extraordinary daughter. On a crisp autumn afternoon, Robert sat in his study, absently flipping through a photo album. Images of Lily's childhood stared back at him: birthday parties, school plays, quiet moments at home. Each photo was a bittersweet reminder of how quickly she had grown up and how suddenly she had embarked on her incredible journey. A soft knock on the door pulled him from his reverie. Victoria entered, carrying 2 steaming mugs of coffee. "Thought you could use this," she said, handing him a mug. Her eyes fell on the photo album, and a small smile tugged at her lips. "Remembering the good old days?" Robert nodded, making room for her on the small sofa. "Just thinking about how far we've all come. A few years ago, I never could have imagined any of this." Victoria settled beside him, her shoulder brushing against his in a comforting gesture. "None of us could have. But here we are." As they sat in companionable silence, sipping their coffee and reminiscing, a sudden change in the air made them both sit up straight. The room seemed to shimmer, reality bending in a way that had become hauntingly familiar. "Robert," Victoria breathed, her eyes wide. "Do you think—" Before she could finish her thought, a swirling portal of light materialized in the center of the study, and through it stepped Lily, looking both exactly as they remembered her and somehow profoundly changed. "Mom! Dad!" she cried, her face lighting up with joy. Robert and Victoria were on their feet in an instant, enveloping Lily in a tight embrace. For a long moment, they simply held each other, tears of happiness and relief flowing freely. When they finally pulled apart, Robert cupped Lily's face in his hands, studying her intently. "Are you okay? Are you hurt? Where have you been?" Lily laughed, a sound filled with the wonder of 1,000 worlds. "I'm fine, Dad. Better than fine. And where I've been—" "Oh, there's so much to tell you." Over the next few hours, Lily regaled them with tales of her adventures across the multiverse. She spoke of worlds where history had taken radically different turns, of realities where the laws of physics behaved in ways that defied imagination, of dimensions filled with beings both terrifyingly alien and heart-rendingly familiar. "But the most amazing thing," Lily said, her eyes shining with excitement, "is how interconnected everything is. Every choice, every action, it ripples across realities in ways we can't even begin to comprehend." As night fell, they moved to the back porch, where so many pivotal moments in their lives had unfolded. The stars twinkled overhead, seeming to wink with the secrets of the universe. "So what happens now?" Victoria asked, voicing the question that had been on both parents' minds. Lily's expression turned serious. "There's still so much to explore, so much to learn, but I've also discovered something important." She reached out, taking each of her parents' hands in her own. "No matter how far I go, no matter what incredible things I see, this right here with you will always be my anchor, my home." Robert felt a lump form in his throat. "We'll always be here for you, sweetheart, no matter what." As they sat together under the vast canopy of stars, Robert marveled at the journey that had brought them to this point. From a life built on lies to a family forged in extraordinary circumstances, they had weathered storms that would have broken lesser bonds. And now, with Lily poised between worlds, ready to continue her exploration of the multiverse, Robert realized that their greatest adventure was still unfolding. For in Lily's eyes, he saw not just the reflection of countless realities, but the infinite potential of the human spirit, a spirit capable of transcending boundaries, overcoming impossible odds, and finding love in the most unexpected places. As the night deepened, Lily began to share more details of her travels, each story a window into worlds beyond imagination. And with each tale, Robert and Victoria felt their own perspectives expanding, their understanding of the universe and their place in it shifting in profound and beautiful ways. The weeks following Lily's return were a whirlwind of reunions, explanations, and preparations. Word of her arrival spread quickly through their small network of those in the know. Jack, Robert's father, and the handful of other families who had been touched by Project Cypher. On a sunny Saturday afternoon, they gathered in the Andersons' backyard for a celebration that was part homecoming, part strategy session. As burgers sizzled on the grill and children played on the lawn, the adults huddled in small groups, their conversations a mix of joy and concern. Robert found himself by the old oak tree, deep in conversation with Jack and Dr. Elena Rossi, one of the few ethical scientists who had defected from Project Cypher years ago. The implications of what Lily has discovered are staggering, Doctor, Rossi was saying, her eyes alight with scientific curiosity. The ability to navigate between realities, it could revolutionize our understanding of physics, of the very nature of existence itself. Jack nodded, his expression thoughtful. It's incredible, no doubt, but it also raises some serious security concerns. If Lily can move between realities, what's to stop others from doing the same? We could be looking at threats from dimensions we didn't even know existed. Robert listened to their discussion, a familiar mix of pride and worry churning in his gut. His gaze drifted to where Lily stood with a group of other Cypher children, young adults now, each with their own unique abilities. They were laughing and chatting, but there was an intensity to their interaction, as if they were connecting on levels beyond normal human perception. Victoria appeared at his side, following his gaze. "They're planning something," she said softly. "I can feel it." Before Robert could respond, Lily broke away from the group and approached them. Her expression was serious, but there was an undercurrent of excitement in her eyes. "Mom, Dad," she said, "there's something I need to tell you, something important." She led them to a quiet corner of the yard, away from the others. Taking a deep breath, she began to explain. "During my travels, I've discovered something incredible. The abilities we have, myself and the other Cypher children, they're not just random genetic flukes, they're part of something bigger, something that spans across multiple realities." Robert and Victoria exchanged a glance, both sensing that they were on the cusp of yet another paradigm shift. Lily continued, her words coming faster now. "There's a cosmic tapestry, I guess you could call it, a web of connections that links all realities. And we, the Cypher children, we're like threads in that tapestry. We have the potential to mend tears, to strengthen weak points, to help maintain the balance between worlds." Victoria's eyes widened in understanding. "You're saying that Project Cypher, for all its ethical failings, accidentally tapped into something fundamental to the structure of the multiverse?" Lily nodded. "Exactly. And now that we understand our purpose, we have a responsibility to use our abilities for the greater good, not just of our world, but of all worlds." Robert felt a swell of emotions: pride, fear, awe. "What does this mean, practically speaking? What are you planning to do?" Lily's expression was a mixture of determination and apprehension. "We want to form a team, a group of Cypher children who can work together to monitor the multiverse, to intervene when necessary to prevent catastrophic breakdowns between realities. It's dangerous work, but it's vital." As the implications of Lily's words sank in, Robert found himself at a loss. The scope of what she was proposing was beyond anything he had imagined. His little girl, whom he had once worried about protecting from schoolyard bullies, was now talking about safeguarding the very fabric of reality itself. Victoria, ever practical, was the first to find her voice. "You'll need support, resources, a base of operations." Lily smiled, relief evident in her expression. "So you'll help us?" Robert placed his hands on Lily's shoulders, looking into her eyes that now held the wisdom of countless worlds. "Lily, from the moment you came into our lives, all we've ever wanted was to support you, to help you become the best version of yourself. If this is your calling, then we'll do everything in our power to help you succeed." Tears welled up in Lily's eyes, and she pulled both her parents into a tight embrace. "Thank you," she whispered. "I couldn't do this without you." As they stood there, Holding each other close, Robert felt a profound sense of coming full circle. The journey that had begun with lies and manipulation had led them here, to a moment of truth, of purpose, of cosmic significance. The celebration in the backyard continued, the sounds of laughter and conversation drifting on the warm afternoon air. But for Robert, Victoria, and Lily, the world had shifted once again. They stood on the brink of a new chapter, one that would take them beyond the boundaries of their own reality and into the vast, interconnected tapestry of the multiverse. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the yard, Robert looked at his extraordinary family, at Victoria, whose strength and resilience had seen them through so much, and at Lily, whose destiny now seemed intertwined with the fate of countless worlds. He thought of the long road that had brought them here, of the challenges they had overcome and the bonds they had forged. And he realized that no matter what incredible adventures lay ahead, no matter what cosmic responsibilities Lily and the other Cypher children would shoulder, the most important thing would always be the love that bound them together. For in the end, it was that love, a force more powerful than any genetic enhancement or interdimensional ability, that had given them the strength to face the impossible. And it would be that love that would guide them as they stepped into the unknown, ready to play their part in the grand, infinite dance of the multiverse. As night fell and stars began to twinkle overhead, Robert raised his glass in a quiet toast, to family, to love, and to the infinite possibilities that lay ahead. The next chapter of their extraordinary journey was about to begin, and he couldn't wait to see where it would lead them.